Oftentimes, characters in the media can be identified by an iconic object that they are known for. For instance, it may be difficult to describe the personality traits of Mario from Nintendo's games, because let's face it, the Mario games are about a plumber jumping around, occasionally with a green dragon and sometimes his brother to complete stages. And as fun as that is, we don't think too much about who he is as a person and what his ideals are about life, and many people, for good reason, would probably prefer it to stay that way. However, if you showed Mario's red hat to anybody with a basic knowledge of Nintendo, they would know exactly who and what you are referring to. Now you may be wondering why I am sitting here talking about Mario from Nintendo when this is supposed to be a video about Code Geass and Death Note. Well, much like Mario, both Lelouch Lamperouge and Light Yagami have specific objects that they are iconic for, those being the Power of Geass and the Death Note respectively. To be fair, both of these characters also have a great deal of memorable traits, but these traits would not be fully realized in a world where they never received their murderous powers. Think about it, would Light Yagami have ever gone on a god-complex-fueled killing spree if he never came in contact with the Death Note? And would Lelouch be capable of taking on the Britannian Empire without his controlling Power of Geass? The answer to both these questions is a simple no, and you may argue that they would find other means to achieve their goals, but the only reason they had these specific goals was because they were given a golden opportunity to pursue them. Sure, Light may have felt that the world was a rotten and boring place, but he would have never been able to achieve his position of Kira without the Death Note. Similarly, Lelouch may have heavily disagreed with the Britannian control over Japan, but he wouldn't have really been as effective as he was with the Geass. Hell, even being a master strategist, without his power, Lelouch would have been brutally murdered by the Britannian soldiers in the first episode. And that would be talking about a show being over before it even started. So this brings us to the main point of this video. What do these weapons of death reveal about Lelouch and Light as characters? Many people would simply describe them as tools to achieve a greater purpose, but they are much more than that. To begin, let's look at the Death Note, a book where if you write someone's name down while thinking of that person's face, he or she will die of a heart attack. A pretty simple concept. You can also specify the way that a person will die and also the time of death within reason. There are a plethora of other rules associated with the Death Note, such as the idea that you cannot force somebody to kill another person by writing it down in the notebook. For instance, let's say that I got a Death Note and I wrote down Nicolas Cage stabs Brad Pitt in the neck and then dies from a heart attack. In this scenario, both of them would die, but neither would be killing the other. They'd simply both die of a heart attack. Now this contrasts heavily with the Power of Geass, which can be used for this exact purpose. So in this way, Light has to become much closer with his victims and be a very charming man, all the while planning to murder somebody in a group that he associates with. This is the main driving point of Death Note, though, as it causes Light to have to get in close with the detectives who are actually trying to find him. With Geass, it would have been very simple for Light to tell Misa, or really anybody, to go kill L. And that would be it. Case closed. The game is over. But that's not how it turns out at all, because Light needs the first and last name of his victim for his power to work. It puts a limiter on what he can accomplish, while at the same time causing him to be much more manipulative than Lelouch will ever be. In a way, I would say that Light's method is much harder due to the fact that it's not only about confrontation, but also infiltration. For Lelouch to use his power, he simply needs to look at them, give them instructions, and the deed is done. A far cry from the complex process that Light must go through to use his Death Note. On the topic of how manipulative Light is compared to Lelouch, I'd like to push the point further with the idea of how the Death Note and Geass contrast even greater and cause major differences between how the two characters act. The Death Note, for better or for worse, is painfully binary. It has one purpose, and only one purpose: to kill. Sure, Light may be able to have somebody write a name on a wall before they die, but the eventual outcome of his method is death. This causes Light to have no remorse for his actions. because he really cannot afford it. He doesn't have the option of controlling somebody and then sparing their life. This is much different than the power of Geass, which is much more versatile and forgiving. Lelouch can order a person to bake cookies every Monday for the next 20 years, and they would obey him without fail. Although it also has the unfortunate limiter of only being able to be used once per person, so if he needed that cookie guy to do anything else, he'd have to bust out some good old-fashioned persuasion. However, Lelouch is a man that oftentimes does not want his enemies dead, but simply controlled or doing his bidding. In another way, Lelouch also values free will, and he would never, until maybe later on in the series, issue the order of, "From now on, you shall obey all of my orders," which would be a legitimate order, by the way. He can only give one, but if it was very general, it could work like that. He doesn't want his followers to be puppets, but he wants people to rally behind him on their own free will once they realize his effectiveness as a leader. Light, on the other hand, operates largely alone or with a small number of people to achieve his goals, because, well, he cannot force people to do what he says unless he's okay with killing them, or somehow trying to persuade them. Which, throughout the entire show, Light has shown he has zero regard for human lives, but at the same time, killing specific people may give him a way to L. So, he doesn't really care about people, but he cares about self-preservation. Working by himself is often the most effective method given his circumstances. Lelouch has the luxury of giving an order that is simple in nature, and Light must be willing to sacrifice someone's life even to do something limited. The product of all of this is easy to tell. Lelouch is a charismatic leader who can use his Geass to convince anyone to do anything. He often shows compassion for others and values those who are loyal to him. On the other hand, Light is a cool, calm, and mostly collected serial killer who shows no real compassion for anybody and will let no one stand in his way of becoming the god of the new world. And inevitably, it leads to the question, what if their tolls were reversed?